Hello, I'm Jashikins, and welcome again to another episode of Jash Reads. Tonight, we'll be continuing Animorphs number 10, The Android by K.A. Applegate, and as always, this video is not intended for kids. Instead, this video is intended for adults who are discovering or rediscovering the joy that is Animorphs. And yeah, last week was really hectic. And then Thursday of last week, it was like life was like, so you thought this week was stressful? Well, I'm going to put the stress of a whole week into one day. And then I can't remember what was really happening Friday, but I was doing a little voice work for someone and practicing, my lines on Friday, and I was just utterly exhausted. Yeah, damn. But this week, so far, is shaping up to be less hectic. But I know as soon as I said that, suddenly something will happen, making this week even more hectic than whatever the hell happened last week. So, let's get started. Yay! My dad made chicken for dinner that night. I'd spent the afternoon with my friends debating the mess with Eric. We'd gone round and round, but in the end, we knew we would show up for the meeting. We had no choice, really. Barbecue chicken, skin on mashed potatoes, roasted corn on the cob. This was the absolute height of my father's cooking ability, so I had to eat it. I had to. But man, there is something about popping out through the throat of a bird that totally destroys your appetite for dead bird. How is it? My dad asked. Great, I answered. We were on the deck in our backyard. It was a house like the house we'd lived in long ago when we were a complete family. After my mom's death, that's still how I thought about it. My dad had spiraled down for a long time. He'd lost his job. We'd moved out of the house and ended up living in a pretty terrible apartment on the edge of a bad part of town. It was okay, really. I mean, having a lot of stuff and a nice house is cool, but it wasn't being poor that bothered me. It was being alone. My father had been off in some world of his own for a long time. I'd been the one who had to cook and clean and all that. It was nice to have a house and a yard and a barbecue again, but it wasn't about the house. It was that my dad was my dad again. Oh, I know that sounds corny coming from me. Another piece? Sure. Breast. I held out my plate and tried not to think about exploding crows. Or the fact that I'd come very close to having beetle for lunch. Sometimes my life was just too weird. I had questions to ask my father, but I wanted them to sound natural. Like I was just making normal conversation. So, Dad, what are you doing at work lately? He shrugged and gave me a wink. We're finishing up the observatory project. I still can't figure out what happened there. That software your friend No accidentally created just sort of disappeared. My friend No was really Axe. There was a long story behind all that. You could probably ask our friendly neighbor Andalite about it, but it wasn't a story I could tell my father. What'll you do then after you get done at the observatory? I asked, trying to seem totally casual by chomping on corn the whole time. My dad's eyes flickered toward me, almost suspiciously. He shrugged. A project I can't talk about for this company called Matcom. I laughed, trying to stay very casual. Building a better bomb? He didn't answer for a few seconds. Then, in a strange voice, he said, I've I've never done weapons research. I was actually surprised. Why not? You going to eat that chicken or just tease it? He gave me a long look, like he was trying to decide if I was old enough to hear what he was going to say. I picked up the chicken breast. Chicken wasn't crow after all. It was your mom, he said. I stopped eating. The last year and a half before, you know, before, it was like this perfect time for us. He smiled at some picture only he could see. We used to fight every now and then when you were younger, like most couples. But then it was as if all our problems were gone, settled. Maybe I had changed. Maybe she had. I don't know. I felt cold fingers around my heart. It was the best time of my life, he said. It was like we'd achieved some level of perfect peace and perfect love. But at the same time, there were these times when your mom would seem upset, like she was struggling with some problem she wouldn't tell me about. I had stopped breathing. I knew! I knew now when the change had been made. The perfect love my father was talking about was the Yeerk at work in my mother's head. The Yeerk wasn't interested in stupid little domestic battles. It wanted peace so that it could focus on deeper goals. Anyway, one day I woke up in the middle of the night. Your mom was sitting up in bed, wide awake. I knew she'd had a bad dream or something, but it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It was just... He shook his head. It was so strange. She sounded like she was trapped in a deep well and trying to call out to me. There were tears in my eyes. I hoped my father would notice. She said, "They won't take you if you stay away from the military." It didn't make any sense. But the way she said it, like it was the hardest thing she'd ever said. Like it was the most important thing she'd ever said. I had some idea just how hard it had been for my mother to say that. Sometimes, when there is some terrible need, the human being crushed beneath the Yeerk can force its way out. It can seize control for a few desperate seconds. They say the price the human host pays is terrible. The Yeerk has mental tortures it can carry on for weeks. My mother, my real mother, had struck when the Yeerk was distracted and for a few seconds regained control. Anyway, my dad said, "I know it was just your mom having a bad dream, but ever since then, whenever an opportunity came up to do defense work, I just got this bad feeling about it. I couldn't even pretend to eat anymore." Dad, are you thinking about taking on a military project now? He avoided my gaze. There are some very exciting things going on with this MACCOM. The thing they want me on isn't military in any way, but, well, they do carry on some very secret work. I guess some of what they do is probably military. There it was. The reason Tom was trying to get me to bring my father to the sharing. My father was working on some project that the Yeerks wanted to control. My mother had warned him. It may have been the last words that she, the real human woman, ever spoke to him. He was going to ignore that warning, and now the Yeerks wanted him. And that's that lovely chapter. Lovely, happy chapter with only happy things happening in it, because it's like that level of happy. So again, this is going to be something I'm reading too much into the text, and I will readily admit that. But I have this thing of thinking that Marco, is a little too straight. Like he's trying to act too straight. Like, see, no homo here. I am totally 100% straight. And so when he said, asked for a chicken breast, I'm like, well, you you know where my thoughts going there, and I'm like, I'm reading too much into this. It's like at that moments like those where I'm like, I might be a little too into the fact that he's not straight, and I'm just picking anything that's remotely sexual in the text. Yeah, or maybe quarantines making me focus on odd things to relieve my stress of life in general. And I like that, at the end of book 5, Marco's dad finally recovered from his big slump, and I like that this chapter paints the differences between, back before book 5 and after. I like that difference. Like, yeah, my dad's a happier person. We're living in a better place. And oh yeah, I also want to say I love the reference to Axe and the whole why he's called No. And you haven't read book 8. You should not have been watching this video, but yeah, that the reason Axe is called No is because Mario said, so just answer yes and no questions, only yes and no. So Axe is like, oh, I just have to say yes or no to every question, even when it doesn't really make sense. So Axe said, yeah, I'm No. He said his name was No, basically. So I like that being referenced. Yeah. So my question for you for tonight's video is, let's see, good question. Do you like eating chicken? And if you like eating chicken, what's your favorite piece of the chicken? Do you like something like, a wing? Do you like, like the chicken heart? What do you like, light meat or dark meat? And maybe you don't like chicken at all, in which case tell me why. For me, I don't really like chicken. I don't really have a sense of smell, so I need it to be moist, and a bunch of chicken is not moist enough for me to actually taste anything. So yeah. And also, please comment below with anything else you notice in this chapter. The good, the bad, the ugly. And remember, no major spoilers, as I am hoping, against hope, that people find this, get into Animorphs via these videos. So there's some major twists and turns coming up that you don't want to be spoiled for, trust me. And like this video if, let's see, I can't say like this video if you've nearly been eaten by a bird and had to demorph. To save yourself. Doesn't really work. But, so thumbs up for good meal. Okay, let me rephrase that because now I figured out how to actually properly word that. Thumbs up if you think the dinner Marco's dad cooked is a good one and something you'd enjoy eating. And also remember to subscribe to this YouTube channel because I am going to be reading the entire Animorphs series. So you don't want to miss a thing. Also, go out and buy the books, maybe Kindle or the physical copies. There's now audiobooks for the first 10 books in the main series. There's going to be a graphic novel coming out, so and I hope you are all staying safe. And remember, do not go out unless you absolutely have to. And for all the central service workers, sadly, the only thing I can do at this moment is say thank you. I really wish I could do more, but yeah. And until next video, goodbye. Bye.